Hello everybody, Old Gamer Joe back here with another Media Moogle review, and wow did I get my butt handed to me by this one from Troglobites Games. This is HyperParasite, which has been in early access for a bit now on Steam, but is finally ready for the big show, and wow is this a difficult, challenging, though very innovative game in a lot of different ways. The sweaty, smoky 80s backdrop of HyperParasite sets the tone for what is a story all about a black tentacle alien creature which you will play as throughout the game that is wreaking havoc on humanity, killing everything in its path, possessing bodies, and becoming those people in order to continue said killing spree. Everyone who is willing and able is tasked with trying to kill the alien, so you get to play the bad guy in this one, which is a little bit of a role reversal. Not exactly a new idea, but still fresher than playing the traditional good versus bad story. The end goal is to push a big red button, which is said to unleash the quote mushroom cloud of finality. But good luck getting there, because boy, this game is not going to make it easy for you at all. HyperParasite, to its credit, is actually really innovative in the gameplay department. You are playing as this tentacle, as I mentioned, which kind of acts like a venom symbiote creature of sorts. But in that state of being, you're pretty limited in what you can do. Your shots are not very effective, and you can dodge around, but you can also die very easily. In fact, by default, one hit unless you grab some upgrades, which are not exactly easy to come by in this game. But that's where the real innovation of HyperParasite comes in, where you can actually possess human bodies and take over their abilities. For example, you might come across a basketball player who can shoot basketball projectiles, or a cop who obviously can shoot his pistol off. Gaining access to use some of these humans involves you collecting their brain and bringing it to a laboratory in the shop areas of the game, where you then have to purchase this said brain that has been brought to this lab, and then you are able to use that character. I hope that kind of makes sense. To make that a little easier to understand, you basically have to kill enemies, bring back the item to this said area, and then unlock them with the currency that you earn throughout the game. Unfortunately, currency is few and far between, especially in the early going of HyperParasite. I don't feel like you earn nearly enough for the things that you need to do in this game, and especially considering the difficulty, you're going to spend a lot of hours grinding, and I know that's the nature of these types of games, but boy, did this eventually wear me down and burn me out on the title. The problem for me personally was that I never really felt like I was getting stronger, because every time you die in the game, you lose the upgrades that you had collected. Instead, I just felt like I was unlocking new characters with different abilities, some of which did play a little better than others and were more helpful, but ultimately, I never felt like I was getting stronger in the game, and that was after a long session of playing over and over again, the same area, 5 hours in fact. Now, I'm sure part of that is my skill level. As we've mentioned here on Media Moogle many times, we're more casual players. Though I've played video games my whole life, I do feel like I have a decent handle on them, but HyperParasite, just at every turn and twist, seemed to want to beat me down for some reason. I don't know if I just had a bad play experience or what, but I felt like after 5 hours of play and still being unable to beat the first boss, I was just run down by the game, sick of the aesthetic and sick of the music, and really just burnt out. Which was a shame for me, because initially I really liked the aesthetic of this game. Graphically, it kind of reminds me of an old PS1 game. I wasn't the hugest fan of the actual graphical look of the game, but I did enjoy some of the lighting. As I've mentioned again on Media Moogle before, I like this kind of setting with the synthy wave music playing in the background. The 80s vibe that the game gives off is nice, and I really do appreciate that aspect of the game. It's unfortunate I didn't get to hear more of the music, because the game did wear me down to such a degree where I no longer wanted to play it, unfortunately. What I did hear was really great though, and fits in with that mood and aesthetic that I mentioned earlier. I do, however, ultimately think a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this title, because I can totally see the appeal of wanting to do the same sections over and over again, eventually unlocking all of these cool characters which do have unique personalities and attacks to them that I can appreciate greatly. But I just didn't find HyperParasite to be a game that respected me personally, my time, in a very effective way where I wanted to continue on with it. And that's too bad because this is a game that does a lot of really cool things and does them well. I liked how I could travel amongst the maps so easily with little warp points. I didn't have to keep backtracking from area to area, and the maps label everything nicely, including the shop, which unfortunately you can rarely afford any of the abilities in. But yeah, it's a game that does a pretty good job in so many different ways that it makes it all the more frustrating that I had such a difficult time getting through it. At one point, I even enlisted Angela to try the co-op mode with me, which this game is 2 players if you choose, to see if that would make things a little easier, and she had kind of the same frustrations I did, and it didn't really help at all, unfortunately. And outside of the main campaign and a daily challenge, which is basically just a leaderboard with you trying to set the best score for that day, there isn't really much else for me in this game. At seemingly every corner, HyperParasite found a way to beat me down just when I thought I was about to turn it. Unfortunately, I was brought back to reality, which means the beginning of the downtown area all over again. I think hardcore players with a ton of time on their hands will get sucked into the world of HyperParasite, but for lowly casuals such as myself, don't even bother commenting on it because I already concede HyperParasite is a game that chewed me up, spit me out, and then laughed in my face, and unfortunately I won't be returning to it. For more on HyperParasite and all of our other content, head on over to MediaMoogle.net where we have some wonderful podcasts. And if you've enjoyed our video content today, please do consider hitting the subscribe button below. Help us bring a voice to the voiceless in gaming once again.